Hello everyone, Max here with Fiction Rant, where I give my thoughts on all things sci-fi and fantasy. If you agree or disagree with me, that's great. You're watching this video, so I'm assuming you love sci-fi and fantasy too, and I'd love to see your thoughts if you comment below. In this video, I'd like to examine what is arguably one of the most powerful devices in all of sci-fi, the Humble Transporter from Star Trek. A device that can convert people and materials into energy in one location and then back again in another location without killing anyone. Usually. In any case, I think it's being underutilized in Star Trek. I think there's a lot more that can be done with the tech, even with minimal modifications. Now, the transporter has been used in all Trek series to date, and its capabilities have varied from just doing what's written on the box, which is transporting or beaming people and items from one place to another, but there are multitudinous examples of it going haywire in some way to cause anything from death by merging people with solid objects, to cloning, to merging multiple organisms into a single combined being with the traits of all three combined. I'm going to tackle the transporter in two separate videos since there's a lot to cover. In this video, I'm going to tackle what other things people in the Trek universe could be doing with transporter technology without significant modifications or attempting to recreate an accident. I should start by briefly touching on some of the capabilities baked into the transporter system as of Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. I'll not go into Star Trek Picard era since the show is ongoing and new stuff might still come up. I'll also be ignoring the Kelvin timeline with its transwarp beaming since that's its own whole can of worms. For starters, some weaknesses. First, transporters cannot typically penetrate energy shields, and their signals can be disrupted through atmospheric disturbances or intentionally scrambling the local signals to make beaming impossible. There seems to be a fair amount of technique regarding the operation of transporter systems, as differing levels of expertise have also been shown to result in differing results, such as one technician being incapable of locking onto a target when another can do it more easily. They also must be properly calibrated, or they have the potential to just plain murder anyone who tries to use them, usually by rematerializing them as a scrambled mess or merging them with the floor or something. There's safeties built in to try to avoid that kind of thing, but accidents do happen. As for the features built in, there's a bit of a laundry list. They have biofilters that can strip most pathogens out of a transportee's body prior to rematerialization. They can also strip weapons away from people if they're unfriendly and you want to remove things from them mid-transit. There's a pattern buffer where anyone mid-transit is basically held in memory before being rematerialized at their destination. There's safeties built in so that if a transport is failing for whatever reason, the transportee can be returned to their departure point undamaged, among other things. There's a logging system that typically gets used as a medical diagnosis device, as doctors can compare your last transporter log entry to how you're doing now to see what's changed. The ability can be upscaled or miniaturized, allowing for more specialized use for cargo or small packages. They also have ranges varying from orbital elevations to thousands of light years, depending on what group is using it, but for this purposes, I'm going to be sticking to Starfleet variety, which can really only handle up to about 40,000 kilometers, which is still pretty far, but on a cosmic scale is relatively short range. There's other features as well, but I'll stick to these for this particular rant. So, what else can we do with these features? Well, one use that comes up anytime the show visits Earth in most series is site-to-site transport around planets. This would, depending on the energy cost, render any and all non-recreational vehicle use totally obsolete. In addition, since pattern buffers are a thing, it wouldn't be too hard to install signal repeaters around and between planets that could allow people to beam directly from Earth to the Moon or Mars or wherever else in the solar system. I'd assume that such use would be limited to Starfleet personnel due to bandwidth limitations, but boy would it sure make getting across the solar system a lot faster and easier for anyone dealing with a crisis, since the alternative involves waiting around for a ship to come and pick you up and then ferry you wherever you need to go and then transport down. Another use would be for during battles, when your ship gets boarded. If the Klingons beam aboard and start hacking people to bits, that means that your shields are down, and if your shields are down, you can do all sorts of things with the transporter. You can beam them into space, you can beam them into holding cells, you can beam them nowhere. Remember, the transporter is converting things into energy. Nothing in the rulebook says you actually have to convert them back into matter again. Another nice thing about this use is that when you get the shields back up, you can still transport to your heart's content within the shields, so any boarding parties can still be beamed anywhere except into space. This particular one would be really simple for the Trek writers to work around since being boarded is exciting, and I'd hate to see that never happen again. All they'd have to do is just add a line here and there about how boarding parties are using some sort of scrambler devices to keep them from being beamed anywhere by unfriendly transporters. This one would also be subject to the skill of the transporter operator, as typically transporters will just lock onto something like a comm badge that's already emitting some kind of homing signal. They're capable of transporting nearly anything else, of course, but that would require more complicated targeting. Another use is related to the biofilters, and it's basically to hard counter the initial stages of Borg assimilation. If a drone injects somebody with nanites, immediately run them through the transporter and it should have no problem at all stripping all the nanites out of their system and leave them no worse for wear. Combine this kind of thing with the logging capabilities and you should be able to basically quick save every time you go through the transporter. Have a rough time in a firefight and lose a limb? Go through the transporter and just have it restore you to your earlier state. You'd probably lose all memory of the fight that caused you to lose a limb in the first place, but hey, wouldn't that kind of be a plus? I suppose, going down to the same string of logic, you could just run dead bodies that haven't been completely disintegrated through the transporter and bring them back to life, but that's one application I really don't want them to use. They've already cured death in Star Trek Into Darkness and then promptly realized it was a terrible idea storytelling-wise and pretended it never happened, so we don't need to see another one of those going around. Finally, the microtransporters have a lot of fun application. In the DS9 episode Field of Fire, a rifle that actually used bullets for a change was able to fire a round, have that round dematerialize as it left the barrel, rematerialize in a completely different room without having to penetrate any intervening walls, and continue on to hit a target. This same technique could combine really well with something like a grenade launcher, allowing combatants to precisely place grenades within enemy lines, though I don't know how much use this would actually see, at least in terms of the Federation, since ground engagements were not actually all that planned, usually. There's plenty of person-to-person shooting going on, but usually it's because somebody gets ambushed or something went horribly wrong. They don't usually go in planning to do a ground engagement. There's a couple exceptions, but they're rare. So what do you all think? Do you have any other ideas for applications of transporters that wouldn't involve going beyond their intended use? I'll be doing a follow-up video regarding any off-brand applications I can think of, so hold off on the comments about easy cloning and creating hybrids that you think of until that part. But until then, live long and prosper, and may the Force be with you.